So my name is Padraig, Stapleton, Chief Product Officer with ZEDEDA, with the company over 4.5 years. And over the next 15 minutes, I will provide a little bit of background, context on ZEDEDA, the origins of the company, some of the high-level introduction to the technology, and also spend a few minutes talking about some of the use cases that we've been deployed in across a number of different verticals that we operate in today. And then following that, my colleagues will actually get into the heart of the presentation and the meat, I think, and they'll basically run us through a number of demos showing the power of the platform, how you can use it to deploy apps using technologies such as Kubernetes, Docker Compose, running AI at the edge, etc. So basically showcase some of the strengths of the platform that we've built and why customers are using it today. So with that, let me get to the next slide. So just to provide a little bit of context on ZEDEDA, we're a company that was founded in 2016, founded by by individuals, Saida Wiesel, our CEO, and Eric Nordmark, our CTO. And they basically founded the company with a vision of trying to figure out how to make edge computing real. And I think one of the things that Said always reminds us that the vision of the company centers around how do you bring the cloud experience to the edge. And so basically all the things we've taken for granted, or hyperscalers such as Amazon, AWS, Google, etc., have created and built and made available to us over the last 10, 20 years. How do we make that available for our clients at the edge? And it's not that simple. It's not a case of just lift and shifting what's been done in the cloud and basically deploying it at the edge. Some of them have tried it and it hasn't worked out too good. The edge is unique. When you go to operate in the edge, you're dealing with diverse environments, diverse use cases, diverse hardware, diverse security issues. So all these things make the edge a lot more complicated environment to operate, deploy, and scale it. So that's been the vision. That's been the what we've been focused on over the last 8 years, basically making that happen. So as a company, as I said, founded in 2016, got Series A funding 2019, first product in 2020. And one of our first customers actually was in the oil and gas services company. And I'll talk a little bit about that in the future slide. Really demanding customer, but I think a great first customer for us because they made us a far better company and made for a far better product as we went through the acceptance process with them. I had follow-up funding in 2022 and basically continued to build out the company and the products. We're about 150 people, headquartered here in San Jose, with development locations here in San Jose, in Europe and Germany, and also with teams in India. Funding is a mix of strategics and VCs. So in the VC world, we have folks like Lux and Energize. Two VCs that are very much focused on, edge and also technologies, kind of pioneering technologies. And then on the strategics, we have folks like Chevron, we have Porsche Ventures, we have Emerson, Juniper, Smith, and EDF. And they're all basically companies who operate in the edge and have seen the power of the ZEDEDA platform and want to leverage it and want to support its adoption throughout the industry. And the other VC I should mention is SmithPoint, who is a large VC that's owned and operated by folks on the East Coast, and they're one of the largest investors in ZEDEDA. So let me move on. So ZEDEDA is a company. So what do? We basically provide infrastructure that allows our clients to deploy apps and run their business at the edge. What we really do with our technology is allow them to focus on their application, to focus on their core business, and do that in a secure and scalable way in whichever vertical that they're operating in. So as you see here in the slide, we talk about a lot of different verticals. So our platform basically allows a diverse use case, either from people, oil and gas, who are, you could be on a oil drilling platform in the Gulf of North Sea, or you could be in a jungle in Latin America, or you could be in the Middle East, in the Middle East area. All these different use cases, all these different environments, we support as part of our solution. In addition, you can be a retail, right? You could be a retail where basically you're looking to deploy edge compute in your stores. You're looking to track inventory, or you're looking to do other things locally at the store. Again, our platform allows you to deploy those apps in a scalable, secure, and manageable way. And other industries we operate in is like chemical. We, again, focus in chemical manufacturing. We allow them basically manage those processes either on the line or collecting data to do analytics about what's occurring on their manufacturing lines. And then renewable energy. We have customers who are basically have solar farms all over the world, and they need to be able to manage those solar plants. They need to be able to update applications, and they need to be able to basically monitor them for efficacy, and also to make sure that they're running in a secure and operating at the peak efficiency.
Yeah, the examples you're showing here, the use cases you're talking about, the customers and so forth. These are your classic edge cases. Physically demanding environments, the remote and disconnected environments. But edge has really expanded a great deal. I mean, you mentioned retail, but it's on this slide, but you're not quite featuring it. That's a lot more in generally a controlled environment, like a classic data center or office environment. So what I'm wondering is, was this a conscious strategy by ZEDEDA, or is it chance, or is it more like your sweet spot where you are more likely to be adopted and used in the classic extreme environment edge case?
We see both, right? We certainly have first traction in the more extreme edge environment, because those were the environments where our customers needed a solution in order for them to be able to conduct their business. So, example, in the oil and gas and even in manufacturing, right? What we saw was that without our platform, they were really struggling to deliver their service to their end customers. So we started out there because there was a real pain point that we helped address within those organizations. I will say when it comes to retail, obviously, from a retail environment, I mean, they can sell today, right? People will come into the store, they will, buy their stuff, and they will leave. What we, I think, bring to our platform is that now retailers want to understand better what's happening in the store. They want to have a better idea around the inventory. They want to use RFID tags to have a better idea around what's on the shelf, what's moving, etc. There's also some regulatory requirements around energy conservation in certain parts of the world that they need to be able to do at the retail space. So it's kind of value-added services, or makes them more efficient when it comes to the retail sector. But to your point, they could sell today without us, but we're helping them manage that more efficiently. And I think what we also allow them to do is that our platform allows them to accomplish all this without actually having to build out a large IT organization. So that's why the retail are now starting to adopt this technology, as well as what historically we've seen it in the more extreme locations such as oil and gas, manufacturing, renewables, etc.
And don't underestimate how hostile a retail location is, Guy. It's not all data center-like. Often it's a small kiosk staffed by high turnover, minimum wage staff. This isn't necessarily anything like a data center. Also, back of a quick service restaurant's a pretty hot and chemical heavy place. It really is more hostile than you might think.
Well, yeah, I'm all for embracing hostility, Al. But the point I'm making is that you haven't gotten to the product yet.
Yeah,
Padraig,
I'm about to get there. Yeah,
but yeah, I'm sure you are. Yeah, but ZEDEDA is essentially software.
Correct.
And when you're talking about extreme edge cases, that's the hardware. Well, not extreme, like typical edge cases, hostile environments. That has a lot to do with the hardware, the configuration of the hardware, how it's designed to deal with intermittent connectivity and such can be a software as well as a hardware issue. But temperature, physical security, all that other sort of stuff. So I'm curious to see how the platform enables that particular hardware issue, as opposed to the general edge development, distribution, virtualization, all that really cool stuff that ZEDEDA does.
So what you spoke to is very correct. I mean, so what we see across the board is quite different environments, quite diverse environments that we need to deploy in. And in order to do that, what you see is you need to be able to support quite a variety of hardware devices. So you have everything from some of the retail, right? You can deploy your Lenovo's, your Dell's, your HP's, kind of like desktops with fans, etc. in some cases. When you go to manufacturing and you go to oil rigs, then you need more what's called industrial PCs, more ruggedized systems that basically need to operate in environments that either have a lot of variety in both the temperature, both hot and cold. Also, manufacturing lines where there's a lot of dust and chemicals that actually can damage parts with running on a piece of hardware. So what we have done is we have created this ecosystem where we have worked with all these different hardware vendors. And it's basically, we allow our clients, working with them, select the hardware platform that makes sense. So I'll give you an example, OnLogic, and I'll talk a little bit about this in a few minutes. They're a hardware partner of ours that are very strong in industrial and in more harsh type of environments. Other folks, then they're more desktop, more retail, more your traditional IT type of environment. And then you folks like Siemens, who we work with, Bosch, etc. They're also very big in manufacturing environments that are also quite harsh and can be extremely tough on machines, etc. So the way we solve it is we've created this ecosystem of partners in the hardware space, and depending on the use case, depending on the environment you're deploying into, you can actually pick the hardware platform that actually best suits the type of solution that you're basically deploying. So just to talk a little bit about the product very quickly before I move on to the next few slides, we really have three kind of like parts of the product. One is the ZEDEDA Cloud, which is basically the orchestration and management component that actually resides in the cloud. That's the software that basically allows you to deploy the OS, deploy the apps, manage the apps, update the apps, etc. And it basically runs in the cloud, or it can be an on-prem, depending on whichever deployment scenario you require for your particular use case and environment. It runs in AWS, Google, Azure, etc. We're basically cloud agnostic. Then we have LF Edge. We have Eve, which is the edge virtualization engine. It's basically the hypervisor plus services that run on those edge nodes. So it's basically the software that you put on the device, and it's basically the software that communicates with zCloud to basically download the apps, manage the apps, set up the devices securely, and basically allow you to run your application at the edge. And then we have a global marketplace where we have all these partners that provide different services and capabilities that people want to run at the edge, be that everything from the hardware to firewalls to SD-WANs, all these are runtimes. These are all things that we provide through the solution. So Edge, as I said, is the Edge. Eve is the Edge virtualization engine. It's a software that we created, open sourced, and donated to the LF Edge. And basically, it's a way for you to run any workload at the edge. So that can be container, it can be Kubernetes clusters, it can be a Windows VM, and you could have your legacy application running. So basically, any type of runtime that you need, it will run on top of Eve. So what that does, it allows our customers to basically preserve the investments they've made in legacy apps that are running on Windows while they continue to work on modernizing their infrastructure and deploying apps through containers. Eve is a very small footprint. As you see at the bottom, requires just a virtual CPU, 500 megs of RAM, and 500 megs of storage. What is Eve, right? So Eve really is a collection of a hypervisor plus a bunch of services on top of it that you need to be able to deploy apps at the edge. And those types of apps is basically setting up the network between the edge device and the actual zCloud itself. Basically IO virtualization, pass-through of devices from the hardware to the app that's actually running on top of it. And also the other important piece is root of trust and security. So we need to ensure that when you deploy something at the edge, you can be confident that no one has gone in there and tampered with that particular app or device. And we do that through using root trust and a software process called attestation between the edge and the actual zCloud itself. This is a little bit more detail about that. So the idea is that you can deploy an app at the edge, and basically we will manage and verify that the content on that app from the OS all the way up to the app is correct. No one has gone in and tampered with it. No one has put anything else on that device. We do that through a process called measured boot, where we're using basically TPMs and keys stored there. And those keys are then exchanged with zCloud, and we go through a process of attestation. And assuming those keys match and we see nothing nefarious has happened with the apps on the device, then we'll allow the apps to run, and actually you can then start to run your app at the edge. The types of partnerships we have, they range from companies in the end space, such as Rockwell, Emerson, to all the way through customers that provide security connectivity, such as the Fortinets, Palo Altos of the world, companies that provide hardware, OnLogic, Siemens, Lanner, etc. And then there's runtime. So all these are basically either applications, runtimes, or hardware platforms that are all compatible and you can deploy with Eve at the edge.
You mentioned a marketplace. Is that something that's baked into the ZEDEDA Cloud where I can go and like pick one of these solutions to deploy out to my edge nodes? Or is there something more involved with the partner relationship to deploy any of these solutions?
Yeah, no, we've curated a number of apps, say, pick security connectivity. So we've worked with Fortinet, Palo Alto, other Juniper, etc., other folks. And what we've done basically is worked with them, certified their applications to run on Eve, and then they're basically populated in the marketplace. And you as a user then can basically go and deploy those on your node, knowing that they've already been validated to work on Eve and in the ZEDEDA ecosystem. So it all comes kind of pre-curated from a user perspective.
Okay, so it is that cloud experience where if I went into like a major cloud portal and picked out a marketplace offering and deployed it into my cloud, that's all I would have to do from a selection standpoint. And then I have to configure it. But
yeah, that is correct. But yes, yeah, it's, as I said, our goal is to try and replicate that experience at the edge that people have had at the cloud. And obviously, it doesn't translate one for one, but there are a lot of like capabilities in the cloud that make sense to replicate at the edge, and that's obviously one of them.
Right, I imagine you can do some filtering based off of what actual hardware you have available and its capacity on your edge nodes.
Correct, right? Because some of these, again, like some of these solutions, VNFs, like Fortinet, Palo Alto, they require a certain amount of hardware, they require a certain amount of a CPU storage, etc. So obviously, some of those would not run on very small devices. But there's a lot of cases you just need to ensure that there is enough capacity on the device to support those particular services along with your app as well. Because ultimately, what we're doing is we're enabling our users to run their end application, and we're providing the infrastructure, be that hardware, be that the OS, or be that the firewall and SD-WAN connectivity, so that they can deploy their app securely at the edge. Okay. Let me just briefly mention OnLogic. So that's a company that based out of a combination of Holland and the US for a month, I think. And so we have a deep partnership with them. And so what we've done with them is, we believe that together with their hardware, which I think is really high quality hardware, very suitable for manufacturing other type of harsh environments, we take that portfolio and we basically pre-install Eve on a number of their devices. And what that does, it allows our customers to actually have this. Basically, literally, it's a case of you take a device from, you buy it from OnLogic, you ship it, you plug in an Ethernet, and Eve is already pre-installed. Eve phones home to zCloud, and you're up and running, and your app's deployed seamlessly, right? So it's a way of kind of zero-touch, secure way of actually bringing the compute from the factory all the way to the edge. And we feel that by having this relationship with people like OnLogic and others that we're working with, we can actually simplify and make that experience for deploying apps at the edge frictionless and pretty much make it instantaneous for folks when they deploy hardware. And you
What's
see
the experience otherwise?
Sorry?
Well, I mean, listen, OnLogic partnership. OnLogic is, a premier edge device brand, but if it's BYO, like, or you already have devices, what's the deployment provisioning experience like?
Well, then you have to install Eve, right? You have to install Eve on the device, and then you have to figure out how to configure that Eve device to be able to connect to the zCloud that you have signed up to for the management and orchestration. So you need to understand more about our technology in order to make that work from day 0 to day 2.
Do you have professional services or success support?
We have customer success. Yeah, we have customer success. We have both. We have customer success, our own customer success team, which is responsible for actually basically supporting clients. But we also have partners who are responsible for actually working closely with their end customers. So if we go through partners, they'll provide that capability. If we sell direct, we'll actually provide it.
Is there another, you mentioned that there are others that you're working with in this powered by ZEDEDA. Is there another manufacturer that you can mention that's up there in this zero touch provisioning or fast on-ramp to the cloud through the hardware?
So for one of our other customers, I won't name the customer, but the actual HP is the vendor. They actually pre-installed the software on their actual hardware as well as it's shipped out of the factory. So we've done that with a number of vendors where basically people order it, gets installed, and then gets shipped to the remote sites. So that's an example of another vendor that actually does that for us. Okay. I'm going to skip to this because I know in interest of time, I've probably spent a lot of time already. I want to talk about a few use cases quickly. So one is container shipping. So we, as I said, one of the verticals we're in is shipping. And basically, this particular shipping company had a basically requirement to be able to modernize the infrastructure on the ships. So they needed the ability to run services on the ships, deploy apps onto the ships, monitor containers on the ships, and those could be refrigerated containers. There could be other containers that are actually in the process of, in some cases, ripening food when it's from transit from one location to the other, and they needed connectivity, and they need to do this across the fleet. So they look to ZEDEDA as a platform to basically allow them to deploy those types of apps uniformly across their fleet. ZEDEDA was a way for them to actually manage all those apps securely. And also ZEDEDA was basically, because we could support containers as well as legacy VMs, it would future-proof their ecosystem on the ship. And all that could be backhauled via their 5G, Starlink, etc. So an example of a customer basically leveraging ZEDEDA as the infrastructure to enable their business on the ships. And again, either in port or at sea, they're always connected using the platform that ZEDEDA provides. Any questions before I move on? Global manufacturer. So one of the top two global manufacturers, as they went to roll out their EV fleet in 2025, they needed the ability to securely deploy software from the factory to the dealerships. So we provided the infrastructure for them to be able to deploy software from factory to dealership and basically download it onto cars. So we did this for 70,000 dealerships worldwide. And basically, this is probably one of the largest, I think, edge deployments in the world, actually. And this was basically a security-driven requirement where there was some requirements, UNCC R145. Basically, you needed to ensure that this was done securely and done in a way that the software could not be hacked, and you could ensure the viability of the software and basically from source to destination. Again, we've deployed that successfully with a very large automotive manufacturer worldwide. Global retailers, we talked a little bit about this. We're working with a lot of folks in the retail space to basically digitize what they're trying to do in the stores. I would think the challenge for retailers is that retail is a very competitive market. I'm not saying other markets aren't, but margins are very tight, and they're always looking at ways to be more efficient. And I think our platform allows them to deploy technology at the edge, deploy the apps that I talked about at the edge, be that from inventory management, RFID tracking, user tracking, etc. But to do that at scale without having a large IT group supporting it. And I think we've seen with some very large retailers that they look at our platform as a way for them to be able to accomplish all these things without having a massive workforce behind it. They use our technology in place of that. And SLB, oil and gas. As I said, we started out in the oil and gas space, very much a very, I'd say, tough environment for them. And also they were a great environment for us to develop a solution for. What they required is basically our equipment to be able to run well in real-time environments, be able to gather data, process data, and do analytics at the remote site. And I think you see the quote there from the chief architect in the SLB, but we provided a solution that allowed them basically, again, to focus on their app at the well side, on the drilling platform, etc. And basically, we enabled them to reduce costs, but more importantly, to do it more efficiently. Because what used to happen was that they were running these applications where they would pull data from a well or from a drilling platform. That would have to get packaged up, sent back to a central location to do the analysis, and then 7 days later they'd figure out what to do. By actually putting all that compute on top of ZEDEDA, we basically allow them to run their VMs and their apps locally. They pull the data from the rigs, from the wells, etc. They analyze it locally, and then they make the decision and basically take whatever action they wanted to take on the well within hours as opposed to days. So for them, it was a huge productivity enhancement being able to do this. It was also a way for them to, I think, be more efficient around how they were operating their business. So just another example of how we enable people to run their businesses better. And I think that was it from any questions before I just finish up?
Yeah, what's the pricing model here? If I recall correctly, Eve is an LF Edge project. It's open source. But you have these services. What's the pricing model?
Yeah, so the pricing model is typically when people deploy Eve on the edge, our pricing model is a support model. So we support the deployment of those nodes, and depending on the size, number of cores, etc., this is a tiered pricing model per node deployment. So typically
per edge node with a per core scale.
Yeah, exactly. Because we have some folks who are running like applications on very small Raspberry Pi type devices and others on very large server class PCs. So
you're scaling it to sort of cost of support because they're
exactly
complex. And, but then the marketplace and the management platform is comes with. Yeah,
it does. Yeah, it does indeed. So it's all kind of baked into the per node pricing. Yep. Okay. So last thing, so a lot of the so my colleagues are going to get into a lot of more detail about some of the capabilities in the product. They'll spend a little time next while actually demoing the capabilities. A lot of information. If you want to get for more information, go to ZEDEDA.com Edge Field Day. There's information there around some of the software that we'll be demoing today. And also I want to just give a shout out to Edge Monsters. Edge Monsters is a really interesting organization that ZEDEDA is part of, where we've basically gathered a lot of architects who are basically the thought leaders in the edge space, and they come together on a regular basis and publish playbooks and best practices around how to deploy stuff at the edge. A lot of really good material there. Highly encourage people to go see it and visit it and review it.